Hi. So thank you first and foremost, Brad, for joining us tonight. As I said in my description for this webinar, you are my go-to guy when it comes to all things crypto. And it's an area really where I don't have much understanding at all. And starting to hear so many of our members in this talking about Bitcoin especially and other cryptos. And I want to make sure that everyone's well educated because there's a lot of hype at the moment. And someone told me the other day, and you can probably confirm this, that there's over 950 different cryptocurrencies in existence now. And it feels like almost every day someone's telling me, hey, this is the hot one, check this, and you've got to look at this one. And this is why I think it's time to bring someone in who's been, early days and really educate everyone on the call tonight. And of course, answer any specifics that anyone has about anything to do with crypto or blockchain. So on that note, I'll hand things over to you, Brad.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. And can everybody hear me okay? Just raise your hand if you can hear me okay. Anybody? Okay, great. So my background a little bit. So I started a hedge fund when I was 26 years old that returned 106% a year. But even going back further than that, in 2008, I was making apps as a side hustle, right, on the App Store. And basically back in 2008, when the iPhone just came out, you could just write a long essay about a topic and then pay somebody $300 to go code it for you. And then you have an app that would churn out, a couple $1,000s a month. It was really nice. And we did that a bunch of times. We thought we were super smart and we were making money little bits at a time all over the world. And I did that probably 2 or 3 times. A company came along and bought one of the apps for $5,000, which at that time was a lot of money for me. And I went to the guy who had been coding the apps. I said, hey, what would be like the thing you would code if you had, all the money in the world, which $5,000 was at the time? He said, I would make a Bitcoin trading app. I was like, what the heck is Bitcoin? I never heard of it, right? This is 2008, 2009. So probably about early 2009. So I did my research. I looked at it. I'm like, I didn't really get it at the time. I didn't really understand it, but it seemed cool. I read the Satoshi white paper. I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's make a Bitcoin trading app. So this kid, right, he was like 19 at the time, wanted to go and create like Coinbase, which now exists today. And you guys are probably all familiar with. That's like the main trusted premier thing. And funny, just side note, I actually met Fred Ursham, the founder of Coinbase, at Burning Man this year. So that was super fun. But long story short, I give him the money. He can't get it done because he doesn't have the technical know-how, and he's trying to bite off way more than he could chew, and he fails. But had I just taken that $5,000 and put it into what were 5-cent Bitcoins at the time, you can do the math. I'd be worth somewhere around 800 or 900 million today when you consider that Bitcoin is split into different things a couple of times. There's been a few forks and whatnot. So I call that my 100 million plus mistake. But hey, coulda, woulda, shoulda, didn't. I did, however, buy some along the line, and I've been actively trading and investing in cryptocurrencies since 2012, 2013. And I made, I bought some, lost some, that kind of whole cycle, and I've been following the space very intently, as I am for a lot of other kind of, hey, what's the next system that's going to replace the one that we currently have? There's an old Winston Churchill saying, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. I think it could also be applied to maybe capitalism, like we're in end-stage capitalism. We're looking for better systems to support more people, and that's what technology allows us to do. So when you think about the blockchain, it's not just a cool investment property or opportunity or cryptocurrency. Like, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's exciting because people are making all this money, and that's why people are talking about it. But the blockchain, if you think of cryptos as like the car, and then blockchain is the road that the cars run on, creates so many opportunities for disrupting major industries like fraud, security, identity, healthcare, real estate transactions. Just there's so many pieces to it that are really exciting to myself and to others. So that's more what I focus on. And by the way, I've also, even though I made all those mistakes, managed to 50 plus X my returns in crypto depending on the day. So that's been super nice as well. Again, coulda, woulda, shoulda, wish I went way bigger on it. But hey, it is what it is, and here we are. So I've been following space a long time. I've answered millions and millions of questions from everybody all over the world. Recently, I was at a thing called Camp Maverick. Yannick Silver runs it, and he's like really chummy with Richard Branson, a bunch of really great people. So Yannick, at 3 p.m., comes up to me and says, hey, you're giving a panel on crypto in an hour. And I'm like, did you forget to tell somebody about that? He's like, no, I think I told her. I'm like, oh yeah, you're giving the panel. I'm like, you should have given me a little bit of a heads up. But anyway, I get on in front of 120 millionaires, right? That's what the Maverick does. They're like 7-figure earners. and tell them all about cryptocurrency. And I got so many great questions that I decided I would make a cheat sheet for them so that they had that. That cheat sheet I then opened up to Make More Marbles, which is my brand. And we touch the lives of, 100,000, if not a couple million people at this point with our content that we put out every day. And that got downloaded thousands and thousands of times that I can even track, because I didn't put like at first I was just like, here's the thing I made. And then it got so crazy that more and more questions, more and more cycles, more and more stages, more and more speaking opportunities. And now I do about 2 or 3 of these a week where I just answer people's questions. So that's where we landed today. And I'm additionally talking to some of the smartest people in the space, where we have a crypto trading bot. We're working on a course around the material. And it's all with the lean of, hey, there's about 50 ways all of this could go up in flames today. No recourse, lose all your money. So be cognizant of that. Like, this is not, the FDIC insured investments that we may all be used to playing in. This is really high on the risk portfolio. And if you're looking at cryptocurrencies and blockchain investments, there's a lot of ways to see it all go toes up overnight without anything. But then again, I mean, the other side of it is like, this could be bigger than the freaking internet if it comes to be what we think. Right? Because it's going to change the way we fundamentally transact. It's going to distribute trust. There's a lot of pieces to it. So I think unless there's any like minor questions right now about my background or why I'm here today, I can answer those really quickly, or we could just dive right into why I think cryptocurrency and blockchain are really exciting. What do you think, Christian?
Yes, for those who would like to just ask a quick question now that you feel is relevant, which you'd like Brad to answer just before we really get into the meat of the opportunity here. So if anyone wants to just quickly unmute, just shout out if you've got a question. If you
Ideally, this would be a collaborative process, so it's not just me talking at you, but hopefully having a conversation with you as we can.
Yeah, and I appreciate some people may be new to Zoom, so just hover over the screen. You should see some controls come up, and it's either going to be kind of bottom left, you're going to see the mute button, or probably to the side. So just shout out if anyone does have a question right now.
Okay, moving on.
Oh yeah, let's go for it.
All right, cool. So why do I think cryptocurrency and blockchain is really exciting? So I'll just assume you guys know nothing and we'll start from there. Essentially, a blockchain is a public ledger system. So right now, society deals on the premise of a private ledger, right? So let's say I want to write you a check, George, for example. He's the first person I saw. So I write George a check. There's 4 ledgers in that transaction. There's my checkbook, there's my bank's ledger, there's George's bank's ledger, and George's checkbook. All 4 of those need to agree that the money was there and that the money has changed hands in order for that transaction to take place. They call it clearing a check, and it takes a while, right? It can take several days to clear that check, and then George has the money instead of me. Well, what if everybody in the world was working off the same ledger, and 50 million computers around the world were all simultaneously deciding whether those transactions were valid? Does George have the money? Do I have the money? Has it changed hands? And is it in the blockchain, meaning everybody can see that ledger from the beginning of time? So now it's like to use Naval Ravikant's metaphor, a fly trapped in the amber. It would be impossible to change it without really messing up that fly's day, although he's already dead, so I guess it's going to be okay. But essentially, this creates a lot of really interesting opportunities. So now, instead of having to have a third party like a bank or a government come in and say, yeah, these transactions are valid, or yeah, this I guess this currency or this asset class exists, and yes, we can trade hands, and there's all these paperwork and middlemen. You can see how having this distributed trust system that's based on cryptography, which is very big prime numbers essentially that allow those transactions to be kept highly secure. Now we can just do this in real time, and then it's in this ledger. Everybody can see the ledger. Everybody has a copy of the ledger, and then we go on from there. So you don't change the past, and you continue to write the future. And in order to pay for all this, because it does take quite a bit of computing power to run all these transactions, you get into what's called mining. I don't want to go super deep on mining right now, but essentially what it means is that people all around the world lend their computing power to this blockchain network that allows them to receive cryptocurrencies or tokens in exchange for that power that they give to the network in order to verify the transaction. So instead of like Visa having entire buildings of servers that they rent out, now this is distributed across a network, and then coins are rewarded to those miners on a regular basis in order for that to go. And so this is really exciting. This allows different things. So let's just talk about the public-private key system for a minute, because I think that's important to understand. So any single person on the blockchain who has access to that information, you can just look it up at blockchain.info, can see from a public standpoint, they don't have identity attached to it, what somebody owns at any given time. So, there's an account out there somewhere that's just a public key, that's a string of numbers and letters that says this person owns 10 Bitcoin, for example. And then there's a private key on the back end that somebody has secured and is only known by them. That is it could be, again, a string of letters and numbers. It could be 24 key words. So I can go and claim, if I own those Bitcoins, I can go and claim with my private key those 10 Bitcoins at any time. And that's irrespective of whether I'm in Denmark, it's irrespective of whether I'm in the United States or Mexico or anywhere in the world. If I have those numbers in my brain or those keywords in my brain, I can walk across a border with $1 billion. When's the last time you tried to walk across borders with cash in more than, or valuable instruments in more than $10,000 increments? So that's a piece of it. The identity piece, the privacy piece, there's a lot of pieces to this that really make it exciting. Additionally, it allows you to share certain information through this public-private key function, but not other information. So let's use the example of I go to the bar, and I don't know if it's 18 or 21 to drink in the UK, but it's 21 here. And what does the bar need to know about me to let me know if I can drink or not? Well, they need to know if I'm 21 years old, right? So they need to know what my birthday is. I, right now, hand them my ID, and then I'll be getting mailers from that bar for the next year, because my ID also has, my mailing address, it has my date of birth, it has my name, it has all my identifying info, it has all the government records that are tied to that, and then their marketing system can track all that. Now, that's a pain in the ass for me. I don't really want that to happen, but I don't really have a choice right now. With blockchain, I have the ability to share specific pieces of information without giving access to other pieces of information because it's still encrypted. So if they just need to know my birth date, they just get that. And the same goes for healthcare records, privacy, any kind of marketing campaign you've ever been a part of. The people who want to collect all your data have to be approved to do so, and the specific pieces need to be approved. So that's an exciting thing. Think about a real estate transaction right now. Who's bought a piece of property before and dealt with 50 people in that transaction, right? You have to deal with the brokers, you have to deal with the lawyers, and you have to deal with the bankers, and they all want to know every single thing that you've ever done. They want to know your blood type, for Christ's sake. It's like crazy, the amount of paperwork. When in reality, it should just be the buyer and seller that can deal with each other. And the blockchain allows that to happen, because now, title insurance, all these different pieces can kind of be eliminated from that. And the end users can then transact based on a distributed trust system that verifies the transactions in real time. So any piece of property could theoretically, again, there's a lot of hiccups to figure out, and this will be kind of down the road, but these are the opportunities that are coming. So let's just pick one more, because I want to get into cryptocurrency, which is why you're all here. I think there's also a huge, massive opportunity in the healthcare record space. That's a whole medical piece. But additionally, what excites me most is security and fraud. Right. So right now you have Fortune 500 companies in the United States and other places spending billions and billions and billions of dollars a year, and not to mention all the hundreds and hundreds of people or thousands of people that work at those companies, buildings full of people, to prevent fraud and to fix fraud once it's happened. In a blockchain system where all the participants are known, at least anonymously, that they have the money, that the money's been transferred, that it's in the right place, it essentially becomes a possibility to then roll back that system to before the fraud occurred and ultimately deter it completely. So just like when you have a backup on your Mac and you go back in time machine and say, hey, I want to roll back to when it wasn't that way because I messed something up. Well, you can do that with your finances, and you can do that with your customer data. You can do that with your transactional data now. So these are the types of opportunities that the blockchain will afford us when we worked out all the pieces. And I just want to make a few distinctions, because these questions come up all the time. It's not one blockchain. So the Bitcoin blockchain is different than the Ethereum blockchain, is different than Microsoft's private blockchain if they choose to build one. I'm sure they're already working on something, etc. So it provides a lot of opportunities for security, and all of these blockchains can be separate networks that don't talk to each other, thereby increasing the level of security additionally. So let's get into cryptocurrency, unless there's any questions about that stuff, because that stuff's really important to understand where this is all going and why it's so exciting.
Just want to mention as well, we've got a chat feature. So I put in the chat,
please.
Just, if anything crops up, just stick it in the chat box. I'll keep an eye on that for you, Brad, as well. Cool. So I'll keep an eye, but let's go.
Yeah. So let's get to the exciting part, which is money, right? So why is cryptocurrency so exciting? Well, cryptocurrency, if you're familiar with the traditional banking system, all countries, but I believe 3, of which the U.S. is at war with two, which, you know, I'm not going to comment on that, but it's an interesting way that comes, have a central bank. So the United States, the Bank of London, they're all central banks, and these banks are all typically held closely in trust with either governmental or private interests, right? So for example, the Federal Reserve Bank, I can't speak to every central bank in the world, but the way I understand it, the Federal Reserve Bank is owned as a private corporation owned by individuals. We don't know who they are. Nobody audits the Fed. You know, the Fed isn't a governmental agency, even they call it the Federal Reserve Bank. It's, you know, they work with the Treasury to kind of increase the amount of supplying currency and mess with interest rates every once in a while and do things like QE, which is essentially printing money. They buy bonds that didn't exist before and the money's just there, right? That can do a whole lot of things to help and hinder the monetary system. It can also, it's also really, you know, as Nathan Rothschild said, I believe in 1815, right after the Napoleonic Wars were won, he said a very chilling statement. He said, if I control a nation's wealth, I care not who makes its laws. So central banking is a way to control wealth, therefore control a nation. And then ultimately the world. If you believe that central bankers run the world, I don't know if you believe that or not. I don't know if that's true or not. I just, you know, it's a theory. So this is an opportunity to now take that power back and distribute it amongst the individual participants in that system, which is really exciting. So think about it this way. Now we have less middlemen in transactions that take a piece of everything. So there's more value in those transactions. The fraud capabilities are much lower. The security is much higher. And there are multiple ways which we can transact with each other. So when you talk about cryptocurrencies, what you're really talking about are lines of computer code. I just want to be really clear. You can go on blockgeeks.com right now, which is a great educational website that I recommend everybody check out. And I'll give you my cheat sheet with all these different resources. So you don't have to worry about it. I'll actually just put it in the chat right now because I want you to have all the latest information. I update this pretty regularly. So this will tell you about all exchanges, all the different things. But the point I'm trying to make right now is that you can code a cryptocurrency in about 10 minutes if you know what you're doing. So what does that mean? That means that anybody that has a computer for free and can watch a 10-minute video and figure out how to code this thing in Solidity, which is an Ethereum-based token protocol, meaning so Ethereum is a type of cryptocurrency. It also allows people to code things on the Ethereum blockchain that are very easy for a regular coder to do. So anybody that has a minor amount of coding knowledge can basically create a cryptocurrency. Like I'm the Make More Marbles guy. I could make a cryptocurrency called Marbles and sell them to you for $1. They are not worth anything. I would, you know, and anybody who can create their own currency can now go out and promote that currency as the next new hot thing that's going to be worth $1 bajillion. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now. So I liken this to the pump and dump penny stock fads that were going on during the 90s, especially when the internet was going on, you know, all the dot-com era pump and dumps. Like you have no value in this transaction whatsoever. Somebody made this thing up and now they're promoting it as if it's going to go to $1 bajillion. And here's the thing is people get excited, they start buying it and it does move because the market caps are so tiny, right? If any participants start buying and selling this thing, it'll start to move. And people get excited and it becomes a frenzy and there's more information and propaganda. And then a bunch of unsophisticated investors get together and say, oh my God, this thing's going to Pluto. And then the traders catch on and the traders bump it up more. And all of a sudden you have a tulip mania happening. So I'm going to say this unequivocally. 99% of these ICOs are garbage. 99%. We just don't know they're garbage yet. It's either a white paper or somebody coded a Solidity contract in 10 minutes on Ethereum, or, you know, it's a great team that means well that won't succeed at their ultimate aim and goal, which is also a risk, right? You can have the best team with funding and they know what they're doing and they just don't succeed, or it's somewhere in the middle where, you know, they're trying their best, but they're not going to ultimately succeed. So let's say, what's the likelihood that out of the 1%, I estimate, that are legit and really understand both sides of the fence, you know, both how blockchain works and also how to create what they got, and they got a great business plan, it's actually valuable and all that stuff. What is the likelihood you're going to stumble on the one that's a long-term winner? It's close to nothing, right? And just like any investment, buyer beware. caveat emptor. This is not investing advice. I should have started off the call with that. Like, again, I've run hedge funds. I've done this for a living. So I like to just put a heavy damper on everybody's expectations, because guess what? Most of the stuff you're going to lose money in. Most of it. That's just, it's a future going to happen that just hasn't happened yet. So that's a really good place to start. And if you're going to invest money or gamble or speculate on some stuff, do it with an amount of money that's just so small it's not going to matter if you lose it all. That's my caveat, right? So if you want to get involved in crypto, cool. I don't think it's the place to start. Most of the people, I would say 8 out of 10 people that come to me say, this is the first thing I've ever invested in. They're just so hyped up about it, and it's so easy to do because it skirts a lot of the laws that protect those types of people that are unsophisticated, because the government hasn't caught up on the regulations yet. So right now in the United States, and I'm sure in other places, there's something called accredited investorship, right? To be an accredited investor, you need to have $1 million net worth, or $200,000 for 2 years, or $300,000 if you're married for 2 years, in order to be called an accredited investor. That does not mean you're sophisticated. That means you just have enough money where they'll let you dabble in hedge funds and stuff that's high risk, right? And there is the other side of that law, is that people that run those types of securities or investment opportunities can only solicit and market their services in very specific ways to the people who have that accredited status. Again, does not make them sophisticated. And cryptocurrency is going to have that. Blockchain investments are going to have that. In fact, the SEC, and I'm sure other countries are catching up, has already regulated all tokens and all ICOs as securities, and they're treating them as such. And they will continue to get more granular on their guidelines. But for now, just understand that this is snake oil city, guys. All the scammers and spammers are coming out of the woodwork to get you to buy all of their crap. And I've written several articles about how to spot these Ponzi schemes, but I'm telling you, there's a big Ponzi scheme, still a Ponzi scheme. $1 billion will go up in flames one day, and somebody will freak the hell out in government and fix it, but don't get conned in the meantime. And stick to the things that you have a reasonable expectation, where you won't lose too bad if you lose 100%, and stick to things that you have a reasonable expectation that are going to be around in a few years. I mean, Bitcoin's been around for 9 years. Ethereum's been around for 4 or 5 years. Like, every day that they persist, they get more and more and more trustworthy, right? But it's all so new, guys. This is all brand new technology. So just, that's my warning, my caveat, my grain of salt. Now, as far as upside potential, I mean, right now, all cryptocurrencies are about a $200 billion market. That's billion with a B. All money, M1, M2, M3, M4, is estimated at 85 trillion. So if your thesis, let's say, is that cryptocurrency becomes 1% of all world currency, and that, let's just round number it, is $100 trillion, then it still could 5x from here, theoretically, right? If it became 1%, 200 billion to 1 trillion, it could 5x from here, the whole space. And of those cryptocurrencies, there will be some winners and some losers, so they might, in fact, gain even more than that. And a lot of them will go to zero too, or be worth next to nothing and just persist until they die out, for a lot of reasons. But just understanding the scope and the size of the opportunity, that's like the difference between, this is why people get excited about penny stocks, because if a penny stock wins and you buy Facebook for pennies and then it becomes a $200 billion company, you win in orders of magnitude over, whether you bought like a Fortune 500 company like ExxonMobil. When is ExxonMobil going to double? It might take 50 years for that to happen, right? So that's why people get excited. And that's why people are going to get excited about derivatives and options and futures contracts and all the other stuff that people are just aching to put there on the market. And it will happen. But right now, it's so small that the big institutional players can't really play yet. The FINRAs of the world, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, they're only starting to now dabble, because the other thing to understand about markets in general, and this is just good to know, is that if you are a $1 billion whale and you go into a $200 billion market, you're 0.5% of the whole market. Who's taking you out of that position? You can't put the kind of money you're normally putting to work into the markets, because you're going to crush your own bid and ask spreads. And we have bots and we trade and we do all that stuff. But what the key point I'm trying to get across is that this is so new that most people can't play here yet. Most big institutional smart money investors can't play here yet. So the markets, are the markets. And if they're efficient like regular markets, but there's not huge players in them, you can basically start to use strategies that you've used 10, 15 years ago that no longer work in the traditional markets in these markets. So if you had a trading strategy from 10 years ago that worked really well in the Forex markets or in the NASDAQ or in the New York Stock Exchange or whatever, and you were like a proprietary trader, for example, and that stopped working because HFT came along and ate your lunch, or some new algorithm that somebody developed in some billion-dollar hedge fund came and ate your lunch, now it might work again in crypto. That's why we built a bot to take care of those opportunities, and it's ready for demo pretty soon. It's not a pitch, it's just something we're working on, right? So there's cool stuff that you can do in crypto that you couldn't do as an investor in other currencies. And then additionally, there's, like I talked about, all the different international pieces. It becomes a lot easier to raise money if you're a legitimate company. So like, for example, I'm working with an oil and gas company. They do $1 million deals in that space. What they do is they buy mineral rights that are about to be drilled, and then they lease those rights to private equity. Sometimes they sell them to big oil companies. So they do multiple millions of dollars in transactions. So they're already a legitimate company. Now this is just a new fundraising tool by which they can make it easier for people to participate outside the country. Because here's the thing to understand. When I raised money for my hedge fund, I needed to only target accredited investors in the United States. But outside the United States, it didn't matter. They don't have those types of laws some places. So the guy in Switzerland or the guy in Hong Kong or the guy in Singapore could wire me 80 grand overnight. I didn't need to know whether he was sophisticated or accredited or not. I'd like to work with people like that. That's my goal, is that they can take the risks and they understand the risks and they're savvy enough to see what they're getting into, but also they're not under the US jurisdiction. So I'm not as tight about what I want to do. So basically you're seeing the mass democratization of investing happening. You're seeing the mass democratization of currency and value storage happening. You're seeing the mass democratization of transactional value adding happening. And it's a brave new world out there. So here's one thing I'll never do. I'll never tell you, hey, invest in this crypto or that crypto. I think they're mostly garbage. But if I was to give you a strategy, I would say take an amount of money, a small amount that you're completely happy losing. And I'm assuming you have like cash in the bank. I'm assuming you have good income. I'm assuming that you have maybe a good insurance policy and, a good stock portfolio already. You have all that stuff kind of built up over time and you're relatively stable financially. And then maybe dabble a little bit in crypto, because that's really high on the risk profile. It's like 10 out of 10. And the whole thing could go toes up tomorrow and there'd be no way to get your money back whatsoever. So if you were to do that, and let's say you took $1,000, which I'm assuming is relatively a low investment for anybody at the moment. And, I could lose $1,000 and be okay. So I'm just going to start with that small number. I'm not, again, not recommendation, but if you were to do that and maybe invest in the top 10 cryptos, and then next year take another 1,000 and do that, and then next year take another and rebalance your portfolio on the top 10 cryptos, you might in 50 years have something. Right? And that would be a strategy I'd feel pretty good about giving somebody, as if they were going to do it anyway, and I just didn't want them to screw it up too bad, that might be okay. Right. But if you start throwing around 50, 100 grand or $1 million, whatever is a lot of money to you, you're probably going to get burned sooner or later. So I recommend you tread lightly. Okay, let's grab any questions. I've been approached by USI Tech. In case you can comment on them, that would be great. I don't know who USI Tech is or what they're selling. The likely scenario is if somebody's listening to you, it is for a network marketing or affiliate scam or a Ponzi scam.
Hey, I'm just going to jump in, Brad, as well, because I also have literally in the last couple of days from a friend been sent a video with USA Tech. So I hadn't had time to look at it yet, but I was interested by Clay's question there. And there's another company someone was talking to me about last week. So there does seem to be this coming together, as you said, Brad, of network marketing style businesses with crypto. So your advice there is just do your homework, tread carefully.
Yeah, and just understand most of them are garbage. And the likelihood that you're going to be able to spot a winner is so low that it's probably not a good it's not a good bet to make. And I might be wrong. These companies might be totally legitimate. One of them might be amazing. And I'm in for example, I'll just use something for my own advice. I won't tell you which one, but I'm in a pretty large mining consortium that's based out of Iceland, for example. And if you read the list of people that are involved in this thing, you're like, this is total crap, right? But then again, even Ponzi schemes work until they don't. And it's possible to make money if you have a high risk tolerance doing stuff that most people shouldn't even touch, like, options trading, for example. Like most people in the world, I would never ever tell them to invest in options or trade options rather, because you don't really invest in them. And the reason is because like playing with dynamite, you're going to get your fingers blown off once or twice. I've lost a Mercedes in the day. I cry in the hot tub and I get over it and I go back to work. But, most people will never lose that kind of money, and they don't want to, or they don't need to set themselves up for that. There's plenty of ways to invest your money that just, if you guys are trying to get rich overnight, you're going to get burnt. I would strongly caution you to take extreme caution. Anyway, so I think I've hammered that enough. Specific recommendations I'm not willing to make publicly. What I'm doing is very similar to what I just explained. It's just kind of little bits at a time, building it up over time. I'm happy. I'm very grateful that I was in super early. So, my small investments have yielded huge dividends. In fact, my crypto account got so big, it was bigger than my retirement account. So I had to rebalance my whole portfolio. And that was kind of interesting and cool. But, if you're expecting that to happen, guys, you're already unless you have a time machine, that's probably not going to happen to you. So, invest accordingly. It's a future-proofing kind of mechanism. Like if crypto becomes really big, cool, I'm a part of it. It's exciting. It's something you can watch, and entertainment is valuable too, but I wouldn't be making massive investments in the space unless you have hardcore insider knowledge and a lot of experience. Just like any investment asset class, right? Just like Warren Buffett says, you don't invest in things you don't understand. Cool. All right. I feel like I've said my piece. I mean, what specific?
Where do we find the top 10 cryptos, Brad? Lists similar.
Oh, right. CoinCap.io is my favorite app for just tracking what the prices of cryptocurrencies are, and you can rank them based on their market capitalization. So, market capitalization in the stocks and shares markets would be the number of stock. So the number of certificates issued times the price at any given time, whatever currency. So that's all market cap is, just the size of the marketplace of that thing. So the Bitcoin market cap's around 100 billion right now, maybe a little less, and it's the biggest one at the moment. Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash are kind of like neck and neck right now, last time I checked, and then the other ones kind of go up and down and keep changing. Neo is interesting. Ripple is interesting. Because they do different things, and you just really got to go to the websites and kind of dig into the white papers and see why it's interesting. But I'm not willing. I don't feel good about making recommendations, guys, because this whole industry is going to have a huge calling at some point, and I don't want to be the guy who's out there saying, "Yeah, Brad told me to invest in yada yada, and now I lost my 401k," and I don't want to be that guy. I don't think it's responsible to make recommendations like that. So I'd rather give you the mindset so that you can build the strategy versus a strategy that won't be executed properly without the right mindset.
So Brad, question for myself there. As far as I'm aware, the Forex market is roughly around $7 trillion a day traded worldwide. Is that roughly correct?
I'm not a Forex trader. I never have been, but that sounds like in the neighborhood that I would expect. That wouldn't be a surprising number.
Yeah, so I've heard that. So do you have any idea roughly an equivalent of how much crypto is traded per day?
Per day is a great question. I know the whole market size is about 200 billion currently. So let's say 5% of that turns over a day. There you go. Let's call it, $10 billion a day. But that's tiny, guys. I know traders on the floor that do $10 million trades all day, and they can call up $1 billion in leverage themselves. One guy, right? So that's relatively tiny in the ocean of money. That's a thimble.
Cool. Let's see anyone else's questions. Please do pop them in the chat box for us. Whilst you're all thinking of questions, ask Brad.
.io. I'll just put that in the chat. So there's CoinCap.io. It's an app on my phone, and then there's also a website, and it'll just tell you what the relative sizes of all these cryptos are right now, and they rank them.
I'm interested as well, Brad. Just heard Russia, China now working on their own cryptocurrencies. Just how far away do you think we are from every nation having their own crypto and just money as we know it today just not existing?
That's a question I'm glad you asked that question, because that's a question I really want to have with the Fed. That's a conversation I want to have with the Fed and the central bankers, because they're, I think, if governments are going to do it, it's really the central banks that got to sign off on it. And I won't reveal right now, but my plan is to get a room together with some of those types of people and have that kind of conversation. If that does happen, I'll let you know about it.
Cool. Sounds good.
I don't know. I just don't know how hip they are to it. I'm sure it's on their radar at this point. I just don't know how well they understand it or what policy, if any, is being enacted. Additionally, there's a shakeup at the Fed right now. Trump just named a successor to Janet Yellen, and there's a lot going on. So it's probably not super high on their radar at the moment.
A couple of questions just come in, Brad. Is it interchangeable if there are so many?
Yes. So there are multiple exchanges. So think of an exchange as like the New York Stock Exchange, except for crypto. So there's Coinbase, there's Kraken, there's Bittrex, there's Polynex. I trade on 3 different exchanges currently. And it's all on my cheat sheet. If you go to that link, you can grab that and read that. But essentially the way I look at it is, yeah, every single currency could be traded for Bitcoin. Every crypto trades in Bitcoin and Ethereum typically. So from there, you can trade Bitcoin and Ethereum in any other currency. So euros, pounds, US dollars, whatever. So you can get your money in and out of these and in and out of each other depending on the exchange relatively easily. But again, there's so many being created all the time that if you want to buy something that's just a weird one that nobody knows about or very few people trade, you're going to have to look pretty hard to find that. Or you'll end up buying it directly from whoever coded it 10 minutes ago. And you just handed them all their money and gotten nothing in return. Like, guys, this is the closest thing to I drew a $5 bill and you gave me $5 for it that I've ever seen in my life. This is pretty insane. You're literally buying codes, computer code, when you buy a cryptocurrency. And whether or not it's valuable is a function of utility and demand. If there's no utility and no demand, meaning nobody wants to use it, nobody wants to buy it, then guess who's the buyer of that? Guess who the biggest fool in that transaction is? So don't be the biggest fool, right? Do your work, do your homework. Don't buy the marketing hype and the videos. Like just don't get sucked into it, guys. Greed and fear is big, and I can see how it would happen. I've been through the ringer enough times to tell you, it's just until something is something, it's nothing. But it is, like you said, very exciting that all these big countries are talking about it, but who knows what the hell is real? I mean, we don't know. You can read the news all you want. It'll just make you more confused. I just go with what I know, and who I've talked to is, who I believe is very smart in this space. So some of the people I follow in this space are, Tim Ferriss had a great podcast with a few really high level people. I've listed a few of their interviews in, in my crypto cheat sheet. I follow a guy named Amir Rosic, and his business partner is Dmitry Vitalik, who is the father of the guy who invented Ethereum. So I listen to those guys and what they say, because they look at crypto all day long. That's their deal. But it's just like anything, guys. Like if you spend a lot of time on it, you'll eventually gain some expertise and you'll start to sort out the nonsense from not. But if you're just a casual speculator or gambler, which is essentially what we're all doing here, you'll probably get hurt more than you win. And that's unfortunate, but there are ways to. So I always love to tell the story of my investing strategy and why I invest the way I do. So my great-grandfather owned a lot of land on Long Island. There wasn't a lot of demand for housing, so he turned it all into orchards. And he had a saying. He said, an orchard's not one tree. An orchard, I got to plant 1,000 trees, knowing full well that some are live or some are going to die. I just don't know which beforehand. So I'm going to plant 1,000 trees and water them all, and eventually I'll have a thriving orchard that bears much fruit. It's the same thing with investing, guys. Like you got to be able to have enough things going where if one dies, okay, cool. And you have to be able to, because you can't see the future. Those who live by crystal balls end up eating broken glass, which is a quote from my favorite book of the last 5 years, which is Principles by Ray Dalio. I recommend picking this up. He's Bridgewater Capital, 165 billion under management, the best hedge fund manager in the world, in my opinion, and certainly the largest hedge fund in the world. And these are the types of guys I follow because it's principles and it's mindset that gets you to where they are. And it's not some fly-by-night strategy that will change as soon as the landscape changes.
Yeah, I like the analogy there with the orchard. And one more question. I think you may have answered this already, Brad. How do you buy the crypto other than spread trading, as that's the only way that Paul has seen it traded?
So you can buy crypto. So anytime you trade a currency, it doesn't have any value except relative to other currencies. That's how Forex works. So it's like USD is this valuable in relation to euro or gold or anything else, right? So you have to create what do you call it? an exchange rate essentially in order to tell what its value, because otherwise, like, I've got marbles and they're worth whatever I say they're worth, right? No, it's worth what it's worth based on how much can I buy a marble for, right? So yes, it's only traded in relation to other things, because it's essentially a foreign exchange, right? But it's not foreign in the sense that, like, it's a crypto exchange, I guess is a better word for it, than Forex. But Forex just stands for foreign exchange. So it's what currency versus what other currency am I trading, or what other asset class for that matter, to value it. You know, value is relative to other value. But to answer your broader question, you can buy them from Coinbase, Polynex, Bittrex, Kraken, and 100 other, I'm sure, exchanges out there. Those are the major ones, I would say, unless I'm missing one. If anybody has like a huge one I'm missing, I would love to hear about it.
I think that's all the questions that have come through, Brad. So unless you've got anything else to kind of finish us off with, I think you've really gone into great, basics of the whole thing there. So I've certainly learned a lot there. And I think the overall riding message, certainly, as you said, don't put in more than you can afford to lose, because at this stage, it is a very unknown quantity still.
Yeah, and I think you guys are going to be okay. I have to say that, because otherwise it's going to come back and haunt me. And I want this to be a good idea, because I can just shut my mouth and sit in a room somewhere and nobody would learn any of this stuff, and I would not take on any risk. The risk I'm taking is that this could bite me in the ass, but I'd really love to do more of this type of stuff. So I'm just really heavy on the disclaimers. I hope you understand.
Well, Brad, everyone has got a copy of your download, your crypto cheat sheet.
Awesome.
So
Love it.
Would have got that when they registered. You've just posted it again in here for anyone who hasn't got that. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, Brad, later down the line, just ask you questions, just follow you, where can they easily connect with you?
I'm going to drop a link to my Facebook profile in there, and then my website is here. We post daily content. I have a daily podcast as well, on Facebook and on the website. So go ahead and check it out. Jump on the email list. We send you something cool every day about entrepreneurship, investing, life, what I'm learning. Like yesterday, I wrote about how I got nailed by a stingray out in the ocean. Just stuff like that. It's fun, and we try to keep it light, but also informative for everybody.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you, Brad. It's been great to do a live call with you again. Obviously, we recorded one of the earlier Get the Rat Race podcasts, episode 8.
That's right. Yeah, you were the first one, I think.
Oh, well, yeah, likewise. We kind of, we've recorded for one another. So if anyone hasn't checked out the Escape the Rat Race podcast with Brad, episode 8, go back and check that, where we talk about some different things and a little bit more on the digital marketing side. But for tonight, thank you, Brad, for everything that you shared with everyone. I'm sure that you really have given everyone a much better all-round understanding of this slightly complicated area, and certainly one that I think people now will be able to make a more judged decision before they take any steps further. So
I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being here so late. I know it's late in the UK and wherever you are, and from around the world to San Diego, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.